Good morning, everybody. I do believe we worked out all the audio bugs. Christ is risen. The audio tech demons are crushed. We pray. What is it in the Philokalia says when they retreat? Don't rejoice too much, for they're getting 10 more and mounting an attack. So hopefully we got that fixed. The last stream, what was it, Monday? Man, it's so busy. All my days are blending in together. We had no problems. We didn't have to. I think there might have been an echo that came at one point, which is a different issue, but let's pray that going through the checklist of troubleshooting that I eventually, whatever it was, got. I think the last thing I did was update drivers. Good morning, everybody, this Wednesday morning. Welcome. Well, as we normally do for the morning news, cover a few announcements and reminders, and then go into news, questions, answers, and maybe even have some time to play music. By the way, every time I play music, it gets copyright, or it gets dinged. And it says cannot be monetized. Is it really even that big of a deal? I mean, how much in ad revenue do I actually get from a single string? Like, who cares? We got. So maybe that's why I'm kind of thinking it's worth it. Somebody said that you can put in the thing fair use. Interesting story. I was playing bluegrass last night, which I usually do every Tuesday night at the local bar, and I was speaking with one of the players who's been playing here for, what did he say, before they even, so I started playing with them in maybe 3 years ago. And not regularly. I'm more regular now. And I don't know when they first started playing at this one bar, but they said previously they were at another place, and they'd been playing there for 15 years. So I'm like, these people have been playing for a long time. And he said, Helena was a lot different. He said back then that every night, every bar had a different music scene. You could have like old country, you could have rock, bluegrass, like you just, everywhere there were bands playing. And you could just had your choice. And then he said when AMA came in and all this, AMA, I'm blanking on the name of, they had representatives basically threatening to sue the musicians in the bars for playing covers. How crazy is that? And he said everything kind of shut down, and the music scene kind of just crashed out. I'm like, that's really messed up. As if you're not making enough money, like you. I was joking, like, if you know anything about Montana, like, Montanans are real kind of cowboy, like, American, and they don't typically put up with stuff, and I don't want to say it's lawless here, but things work differently up here. And I could just see, like, a scene where it's like, now that might work in the city folk area, but coming up here is a city man threatening us. People disappear up in Montana, saying that stuff. And there are kind of stories like that I have this great book. Oh, I think it's at the cabin. Um, the realtor that helped my parents get the cabin in Lincoln, they like have a legacy family from uh, Lincoln, Montana, a rancher and uh, brought up with horses. And there's all these kind of stories. There's a story about her going through the Bob Marshalls. Um, and I don't know if it was the dead of winter, but our realtor fell off and broke her leg and had to gut her horse and crawl inside of it and lived in there for a couple days till somebody found her. Then there's another story where I think it was her aunt and uncle in Lincoln. And this was recent. This was like the 70s or 80s or something like this. Horse bandits came in. They had a shootout. Stole the horses. And they chased after the horse thieves. Had another shootout and were killed. The horse thieves actually shot them down and killed them. And then they were caught by the sheriff in the local Lincoln bar having a drink after they had mowed down the so anyways, it's just funny that it's like I can just see like, we're gonna sue you. Oh really? I would actually go take a ride I could totally see something like that happening. We still celebrate. We even have something. I want to see if I can pull it up. Called Vigilante Day in Helena. Now, we don't operate this way anymore, but just shows you the kind of, since 1924, I'll pull up. We have been celebrating something called Vigilante Day, which is a vigilante parade. The parade, so little thought of at the time, and then only a splendid substitute of several lawless activities, has evidence. So basically, this is cool. I'll just pop it up. Here's Wolf Creek right there. That's where the liturgy is going to be on Wednesday. So this is the parade. Here's a picture from 1950. Helena High School had a tradition called Senior Junior Flight. It was a bloody and destructive springtime affair, the object of which was the juniors to take and desecrate the senior flag. The fighting got so bad that the school board eventually had the flagpole removed from the grounds. The problem was that the seniors in subsequent years simply ran their flag up the pole located atop high school building, and the fight continued on the road. The crackdown came down, and all aspects of the events were banned from school grounds. This had the effect of spreading the conflict over the town, with further escalation of violence and property damage. Authorities tried organizing alternative senior-junior competitions over the years. In 1924, meetings between students and administrators set into motion a plan for a parade. A grand pageant of historical floats involving most of... Yeah, see, you just channel the kids' energy into something constructive. But there really were... here's the parade, but there really was in in this area where the people actually took care of things legally. Prayer of Jebediah Smith. This is cool. These old. Anyways, that's kind of a cool history. Thought you get a kick out of that. Snakefoot's $5. Thanks so much. Going to visit St. Peter's soon in Montana. Are you excited for how this will benefit the Orthodox community? Yes. I'm trying to remember the timeline. It might be. So they're obviously now that there's not going to be any more snow except for supposedly tomorrow. For some, like it got up to like 78 degrees yesterday, and then it's like now we're getting snow. But they can start. They're gonna obviously, if they haven't already, start on construction. I don't know. So the first step is they're going to try to get at least maybe about 10 cells available. I'm not sure if they can complete that before the winter. So it might be next fall. The idea was that the potential monks would stay with us in Butte. And be integrated and kind of learn stuff in our community here at Holy Trinity in Butte. And then once the monastic cells are, we get the basic kind of the 10 or 15. I forget what they're working on right now is the kind of temporary. Then we can just wait until the entire structure is developed. So maybe a year at best. I don't know. Yeah, I'd say maybe a year. Like I said, if that makes sense. Uh, we had, when was that? When I picked up Abbot Methodius from Hillendar. We had a huge number of come in, and they were interviewed, and I think they got it down to something like 15 or 20 potential candidates. So just because you want to become a monk doesn't mean you're going to have to kind of go through an interview process. And that's why I think the best thing is then those 15, probably in this next year, some of them, either Abbot Methodius and Father Ephraim had encouraged them to either go back into their own parishes and work on things, or go to a monastery somewhere else right now and start prepping and learning how to that kind of life, and then come back in a year. Others will be coming in within this next year and staying with this Butte and being integrated into the community until. But they're probably going to narrow, like, I mean, obviously capacity, the temporary building being built right now houses 10 to 15, then you got to cut that down to 10 or 15. And then you can expand beyond that. Part of MontaNika this year will be Pantaleimon will be talking about, he will be We're gonna give a special kind of talk to the VIP. Though, by the way, you guys waited too long on the VIP. The VIP were really cool. They're sold out. Except I have one ticket left on the VIP. But the tickets are gonna fast. They're going pretty fast too. So we've got 6 weeks. And what's going to happen, because people procrastinate, they're going to start coming in. I don't understand why people procrastinate on this. You're going to find that you're going to be shut out. And the other thing is, people, I'll go next year. Well, I'm planning on it next year, but what if we don't do it next year? Then you missed out. There might be something that comes up. What if I have to go away for the summer or something like that? So you can't just plan on, well, there'll be a next year. I'll go to confession next year. What if you're dead or the world ends? I don't understand people like, I'll just do it next time. By the way, that's the temptation. There was a story about the demons reporting back to the devil about their work. And the devil wasn't impressed by all the kind of old tricks. Oh, I get them to get tempted through lust and the liturgy with looking at a woman. He's like, oh, I get them to get angry at their fellow brother and sister. It's like, I've heard that. And then one came to the devil. One demon says, it's easy. I just get him to say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll go to MontaNika next year. He's like, yes, that's it. Which is exactly why St. Paul says redeem the time. All right. So, get your tickets. Don't wait. Redeem the time. I'm just going to start telling people there is no 2 years. There is no MontaNika in the future. This is the last year we're doing it. And then if it changes that I do it next year, then surprise. It's a wonderful surprise. But let it be known, no more MontaNika. This is literally the last year. And it's too bad that if you can't make it up here. And how about that? All right, next news. Our announcement. We will be doing all my students' grades today for this. That'd be awful. What was the town? Was it north or south of Butte? 30 to 45 minutes from Butte. And what would that be? By the way, I don't live in Butte. I travel to Butte every Sunday. I live in Helena. Sometimes people think I live in Butte because I work there on Sundays. Anaconda. Anaconda is the only place that I know that's roughly 30, but 45 minutes. That's interesting. Where would 45 minutes from Butte be? Phillipsburg? I love Phillipsburg. I gotta get back over there. I really like that town. South of Butte. Dillon? Twin Bridges? Twin Bridges, I bet. It's the only town that I know that's over there. All right. Oh, there was something else I was going to do. Yeah, Twin Bridges. If you know any business owners, doesn't have to be Orthodox, or if you own a business and like to be a sponsor, we have our sponsorship page up on there too. Also, our partner hotel has discounted tickets for $115 for hotel $115 a night, which right now if you booked, it's probably like $176 a night, 180. But obviously, the closer you get to they go up, and these are summer prices, so it's a great deal. We have a blocked out. I haven't talked to. I don't know how many. Once you're not guaranteed when purchasing the ticket to get that discount if those are filled up. Now they've been kind in the last years. If there's vacancy, they'll oftentimes add you, but I can't there's no guarantee. So that's another reason why you don't want to procrastinate. I want to give a shout out to, I don't think it's live. We'll pre-record it and then put it up on Mano's Study of Things. Thursday night, continuing education Orthodox catechesis. So whether you're Orthodox, inquiring, or a catechumen, that class we do every Thursday evening, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time. So join in there. Also, I'll be starting, if you have interest in when I release and start back up the Patristic Faith University College courses, which, as I said, we found out a way to get those transferred, and when you transfer them to a college, then they do become accredited as accredited units through. So the class itself is not accredited. A college that it's accredited can receive those courses because I'm a university professor that teaches them at an accredited college. And then those, once they're transferred, would be considered accredited units. Does that make sense? We're going to add 2 new courses that I haven't done before. One of them is really exciting, philosophy and film. And then also political philosophy. So if you have an interest in that, please contact me and we'll talk about when we'll start those up. Whether we'll do it this summer or wait till the fall, mid-August, to start this back up, we'll decide all together. But I just want to get the interest. And of course, if you haven't taken any other courses like logic, philosophy, science, epistemology, ethics, intro, they're great classes. Just ask anybody that's taken it. That covers that. What else? What is OCIA? We don't have an equivalent of that. There's no official. Catechesis is done by each individual priest or the deacon. The priest blesses. Traditionally, it's the deacon that teaches. That role kind of changed later, but I say we revive it. But deacons have to be trained and be able to do that. But no, there's no official program. Just like there's no official office of exorcist. I've had people ask me, do you have exorcists? It's like every single priest is an exorcist. There's no special right. Like we don't have special rights. We don't have orders. Orthodoxy is all the same. Like all the priests are like. There's not different style. The only thing that we have, that's different, and I'm not particularly a fan of it, and I don't even know how long it'll last, is we have a Western Rite. It's legitimate. It's sanctioned by the bishops, but I'm particularly not a fan of, and none of the priests up here. The priests up here are even stronger against. So you'll never find a Western Rite ever occur in Montana for sure. Oh, maybe St. Vlad's might have a No, wait, that's not true. I think they have at St. Vlad is you can get a certificate to be a catechist. I thought that's what not you get catechized through St. Vlad's. It's a training program in which you can have a certificate. And then once you're formed, and I actually think that's a great idea. Some sort of kind of objective standard and rubric. Doesn't mean it's infallible, but that somebody's gone through kind of training, stuff like that. But yeah, it's not for people who are learning the faith. Yeah, okay, just clarifying. So far, so good on the audio, huh? All right, I think that covers all the announcements. Is there any questions about that before we go into see what kind of news we have going on in the world? Okay, this is weird. Get these weird like people that try to like self-publish and then they at you about their book. And then I'm not even gonna pull up I'm not even gonna pull up because I don't even want you to get this in your head, but like, why am I included? There's only one or two people. Every single one of these is a subversive, closet homosexual, PSA tartar, or some of these are Thomas in here. Like, why? There's a couple good, solid. Oh, I only see one. Why am I being tagged in this demon group? I'm gonna block this guy just for doing. I mean, I absolutely don't tag me in these monsters. I don't want anything to do with these people. Block. But do you know what I'm saying? Have you ever it's like Actually, I should have looked. There are all these people that are trying to grift to the top, right? Uh, well, if I just. And by the way, all the people they added, with the exception of Eric Ybarra, and I'm not. I'm. Obviously, I don't agree with Eric Ybarra, but he's not one of the people that I would say is a goblin demon among the group that I said. I mean, I have issues with him, but that's not what I'm saying. But apart from Eric Ybarra, none of those people he added have any fault. Like, why are. It's not like they're big accounts, right? They're just known. The other people are just known subverters. Like, so it's like. So that doesn't even kind of practically make sense. It's like, you're not going to climb your way up by adding a bunch of goblin subverters in the Orthodox Church who have 1,000 followers. Like, I don't get it. But it's enough to annoy me to block you. But I get these all the time where it's just some rando, like, adding you with their book. I'm like, get off my Twitter. Get off my X. If you're a Roman Catholic considering converting, well, first thing is you start attending liturgies. You start being incarnationally grafted in the community. You speak to the priest about. It's kind of like taking a medical history, like your background. He's getting to know you. And at some point, where you're like, I feel committed going further. I want to be a catechumen. Then there is a service for making of a catechumen and exorcism prayers. And then you go into a catechesis. Like, I'm sure you're free to even before then, like, sit in on the classes, but there is an official moment typically that you're made a catechumen. And if, God forbid, you were to die, before then you would be buried Orthodox. And then it just depends on where you're at and with the priest. Catechesis can be anywhere from 6 to 3 years. And then you're baptized. That's typically. And then, depending on the bishop, he may not require you to be baptized if you're Roman Catholic sometimes. And there's that whole issue. Whether or not that's the right move or not. The chrismation service completes whatever's lacking. So, it's like, I hate answering these emails. I get people who are super autistic about and legalistic about, I want to get baptized and they're only going to chrismate me. I'm like, I get it. Like, yeah, I wish I have reasons to actually think that universal, especially because of how different the Roman Catholics and even Protestants have moved away from anything remotely Orthodox. I think it's a good idea, but the bishop has the authority to do that. Whether it's a good idea that he does that, that's a different. But it doesn't invalidate. I mean, these people really think, like, it's not going to be legitimate unless I do the magical incantation exactly the way it's laid out. And it's just like, Um, all right, we are gonna do an intermission because I have to go to forgive me, I have to use the restroom. I drank coffee, that's why. But let me put on our intermission music. Okay, we're back. You like my shopping market intermission music? Yeah, it's almost like Love Boat. We came up with this the other day. Um, and we thought it was funny, so but I have to take an intermission. We put the intermission music, the funny intermission music. I haven't watched Father Paul's Catechism. I'm sure it's good. Um, yes, and you're right. The catechumen process varies widely depending on. Well, let me just go. Like, for example, the whole autistic baptism thing really kind of annoys me. Um, in part, I think because, and by the way, I have Father Peter here's book on, and I agree and disagree with him on issues. On, I definitely, you know, Jay and others are on the same side. Yeah, I wish uniformly. I think it would be a good idea, right? To, but um, when we talk about the canons and the like, not all the canons are the same, right? You have kind of like canons, for example, is like practical administration of the church, stuff like that. Um, things like baptism or how to like administrative and practical issues. Clearly, those are not on the same not the same as dogmatic. So there's this tendency to kind of just read everything in the councils or everything written as a canon are this kind of Talmudic, kind of Islamic eternal law that doesn't ever. And yes, the bishops do are under the canons in some sense, but then again, there are canons in which, well, the bishop is where the church is where the bishop is. They have the authority to, and they'll be held accountable if they made a mistake on how to do administration properly. But it's just like a Talmudic brain or something. I don't know why it irritates. I'm definitely against rebaptism. Like, that's really bad. I mean, and by rebaptism, corrective baptism, sorry. Does that make sense? So I have kind of nuanced position, but there was somebody that wrote me. I was just like, I don't even want to have to answer this stuff. And what happens, then they'll just go church shop and they'll go around and, I mean, what's more important, that you autistically and Talmudically, follow every single thing, and now you're not even part of a good community because you don't. I mean, think about all the other people in your parish, because, like, let's say they're a good group of people. You abandon them because you're autistic and want to, like, well, I've got to go shop until I find somebody that. I mean, it just seems wrong, right? And I talked to Father Russell about something similar to this. By the way, remember a couple years ago? I'll pull it up. I did a MontaNika specifically with the young, where I started to notice, maybe it was 3 years ago, 3 or 4. But I called it the Unholy Trinity, hyper-rigidity, scrupulosity, and orthospurgism. It's actually a mental illness, like hyper scrupulosity and obsession with, I've got to get the right answer. This is what, so when I talked to Father Russell about the PSA tards and Latinizers, they have that. They're mentally and spiritually unwell. There was a guy in, well, think about how unwell this is. There was a goblin that came on. It's when Jay Kai and David were doing their thing, refuting Miaphysitism, Monophysitism, or the Oriental, and the Latinizers. There was Latinizers that came. Oh, Deacon, you're wrong about. I'm like, I don't care what you think. If you're laity, your opinion doesn't matter. It's like, it's not my opinion, it's the Father's. I'm like, okay, your opinion of the Father's doesn't matter. See, checkmate. But this guy was saying unbaptized infants go to hell. Think about how mentally unwell and spiritually unwell you have to be that you actually want infants to go to hell so that your formula, right, that you're right. And my formula and the equation balances out. Then divine justice is satisfied. And you see we have the equation's balanced. You're insane and should be locked up. I don't want you anywhere near, let alone like, I mean, think about, I know people who've lost their children. You know, God forbid, you know, you ran into somebody who lost their child and you pop your mouth off like that. And I don't know if I'd be patient if I had lost a child to not actually deal with you. So God forbid, but this is this kind of hyper scrupulosity. These people would find satisfaction, no pun intended, in unbaptized babies going to hell so that they're right. It's the same thing with the autistic people about baptism. Yeah, I wish everybody would be not out of the kingdom because, you know, in terms of discretion, a bishop might have not used the best discretion and decided. But going back to, he was like, answer the question. I'm like, I don't answer to you. You can't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. You're a lady. You have no authority over to tell me what to do. I have a priest that I serve under, a bishop, a spiritual father, and a clergy advisory board. They're my hierarchs. They get to tell me, lady don't get to tell me what, let alone a random person online. So I made a thing that said, turn these stones into bread. He's like, I can't believe you compared yourself with Christ. Well, in the sense that we're your authorities, not that we're divine, like the principle. And right when I explain, I'm like, see, these are not serious people. The principle is only demons demand that their authorities do what they say. That's the point. You're too retarded or demonic to get that. Like, get out of here. Like, I don't have time for you. But they hate it. They hate it when you pull the authority card. Because they're demonic. They're narcissistic. My opinion as a random lady matters just as much as... It's like, no, it doesn't. And I'm not questioning the fathers. I'm questioning you speaking about the fathers. I don't want to hear it. Now, does that mean a deacon or priest or bishop can't be? No. But if you have a problem with you, there's a proper way of dealing with it. You go to up the chain of command. What you don't get to do is, lady, is tell the priest or tell the bishop they're wrong in what. You've got to use the chain of authority to correct those who are in the authority above you. Oh, are you in Romanian Orthodox? ROAE? By the way, so Archbishop Nikolai's, that's the Metropolia, which is different than, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, than ROAE. ROEA. That's where I was ordained in. I don't know about, maybe. I haven't talked to Archbishop Daniel about, he may give the priest the discretion to, I know all the ones I've been in have baptized, but I don't. Oh, yeah. So Father Valentine's under Metropolitan Nikolai in the Metropolia. Yeah, great priest. By the way, I heard Father Valentine and Father Julian are coming up from Monteneica, so if you might as well make it up here with them. But don't they hate, like, if you're a person who's insecure and you form a narcissistic kind of personality, or at least an egotistical, they just want people to listen to you as authoritative on the Father so much. You're screaming for attention. So there's always a demon hiding. Probably in all of us, right? Like, no, I'm not saying we're demon possessed, everybody's demon possessed, but, right, we have passions, is what. And obviously, the more we give into our passion, the more possessed demonically we become. It's not, I don't think it's just a discrete line. But the way that you get it to come out of hiding is you just tell them your opinion doesn't matter. It's literally just you're late. They hate it. Mike, you can't tell me what to do. Your opinion on reading the Fathers or what the church teaches is irrelevant. It literally carries no weight. Watch them melt down. Like, yeah, you don't get to say it. It's not how you don't get to quote mine and throw, right? Because your opinion doesn't matter. That's the great thing about the Orthodox Church. I heard somebody the other day saying, well, I've got a theological issue that I want to talk to you about with the Orthodox Church. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Why? First of all, why are you talking to me? It's not, I didn't make up. Why are you going to have a theological conversation about things that you disagree with about the Orthodox Church? Go talk to the bishop or the priest. Like, and not even that made it up. They hold and that's the great thing about the Orthodox Church. Doesn't matter what you think. It's not going to change for you because you don't like it. Just like objectivity, right? Objective facts. The great thing about objective facts, they don't care about your feelings or if you disagree with them. So it doesn't matter. And it's not going to change. So, how many times we've seen that people have come into the church and it's everybody else's and the church's fault that needs to be fixed and not them. It's like, why are you even in here? It doesn't make any sense. If we're not coming into the church realizing we are the problem, and we need to be fixed, why are you in the church? Like, go join the Rotary Club or something. I don't know. Go join a Protestant cult. Like, I don't get it. Oh, because aesthetically it looks cool. I like the smell of the incense and the cool pictures on the wall. By the way, these people are going to be dealt with. The bishops are, like, aware of. And what have I said? Let me be compassionate. It's almost not their fault, right? So I feel like I'm in, like, Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I know it's not. It's not your fault. We raised these monsters and goblins to be monsters and goblins. Why? Because they didn't get the lickings and the bullying. They didn't get the lickings from the parents that they deserved. They didn't get bullied, right? And learn that you can't just pop your mouth off and run it off, They didn't learn conflict resolution. We gave them all everybody's right. You get a but there is no hierarchy or authority. Your opinion is just as equally valid as everybody else's. And then we created the internet where they can just be these narcissistic monsters without any punity of anything, and consequences to anything they say. They can remain anonymous. That's why they hide. Oh, I don't want to be doxxed. Because I want to do what I want to do. They need lickings. They need, how awesome would it be if the parishioners took them out and actually just gave them a spanking in front of everybody. I mean, they're literal children. It's crazy. It reminds me of I might get dinged for this, but whatever. I just realized where this is. Those mountains. I think that's Mount Baldy in Southern California. By the way, I can tell by the rock. I just... Somebody should look that up. What are the...
on you like worms. I don't believe I will. Drop that switch, Libby. Put it down, I said. You're enjoying it too much.
Alright, let's look up where I'm curious to... What mountains... How much you want to bet I'm right? Oh man, I'm wrong. Hold on a second. I got it wrong. I stand corrected. It was Colorado. Well, that looks like Colorado. I swear that looked like Mount Baldy. What do you think? This scene. I want to know what this scene... You know what? That's not right. I know what Colorado... This is too dry. There's no way this scene is from... This is Mount San Antonio, Mount Baldy. I guarantee it. How do we figure this? Somebody figure this out for me. All right, let's figure this out. Come on. You've got a job to do. Where was... And then I hate that you try grok, and I keep getting this. I don't know why it occurs, but it says something went wrong. And no matter how many times you refresh it, you can't get it to answer the question. So I'm going to try opening another window. Nope, won't work. Retry. Tell me what to do. Retry. What is going on? Is X down? I'm not doing anything until we find the answer to this. It's not gonna work. Retry. Yep. I don't understand. Ain't nobody going anywhere till we... Okay, maybe this is it. Filming locations. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that just does not look like Colorado to me. I mean, there was filming in New Mexico. Maybe that could be. See, this is interesting. The Dugout Cabin, Hot Creek, Mono County, California, that's up by... So they did do some stuff in California that's up by Mammoth. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys. That exact scene's in array. Is it the San Juan Mountains? Wow, it looks similar. Okay, so thank you. It was the trees too, but I guess you're right. I mean, I haven't been everywhere in Colorado. Okay, I stand. Yeah, in Southwest. I forgot about Southwest Colorado. Has anything about Nikolai and the hard R, like retard, been talked about? Is that... You mean retard? Bible First Fix 569, $2. Is the only one Septuagint, only one what? One book to rule them all. As opposed to Masoretic, I would be using the Masoretic if I... Why adopt a book from a heretical group religion that hates Christ?
The transcendental argument is that...
Oh, check this out. This guy Keegan, I don't know who makes the Patristic fake clips, but thank you. This must have been 6 or 7 years ago, but like, you want to see how much logic has aged me? I was looking at this, I'm like, wow, I look young. And
as follows. X is a necessary condition for the possibility of Y.
I sound young, too. Look at that. No wrinkles. Youthful. That was 6 or 7 years ago. So this was my apartment in California. Which is interesting, is might have been when I first kind of went online and started doing stuff. But it is kind of wild seeing how young.
Such that y cannot obtain without x. Furthermore, given that x
is this fast?
is the condition for y, it's said to claim if y then x.
At least in Western philosophy, I would say that I believe, and I would argue that each one of these branches is intertwined with the other. So, for example, if I argue for something in the realm of epistemology, if I argue that a belief is true, typically what goes along, we're just going to list some. And somebody.
Anyways, I thought you'd get a kick out of that. Now look at me. Hey, bro, fix your face. It's called age. I'm aging. I'm dying, guys. 6, 7 years ago. I mean, I moved to Montana 6 years ago. And so that was probably 7 years ago because... Pre-coof, yep. Isn't that crazy? Is there any religious significance to the role of the Roman? Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, he's the ruler, the God-ordained ruler of the empire. Sometimes even referred to in a Christ-like fashion, the one who restrains, right? From the secular side. I mean, not the secular because it's not secular. From the civil side, preserving Christendom and Orthodoxy. So yeah, absolutely. You're probably right. I probably drive slower and talk slower as I age, correct? Who's balding early? Me? No, let's do a review of my I'm trying to remember. It's just a receding hairline. It hasn't changed since my 30s. It started to recede and everybody was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna go bald. My late 30s maybe. And for the last 15 years, it hasn't gone anywhere. So it's not really bald. I mean, it just thins out, I guess. But it's an interesting question, though. Christ in our midst. Is there any book on Proverbs? So then, I don't know. That's a great question. Help reading the context of Holy Tradition. Oh, Nikolai Kriya is the one that dropped the... Oh, yeah, that was the video of Jay on the espresso. You know what? Is my Saint Ananias? He's got a receding hairline. I just realized he's not bald. I didn't even think about that. Although, now Saint Arseny Boca, he's got a thick set of hair. He's got a little widow's peak right there. I don't know why people... Well, you know what's going to happen. Yeah, it's just kind of a widow's peak. It's not bald. Get your terms correct. If there's anything I can't stand is inaccuracy, semantic inaccuracy. Who is doing a going off on Jadar? Oh, is Jadar clip? Hold on a second. I'm lost here. JP's uncut. Alright, just spell it out for me. Who's JP? Alright, spell it out for me. I'm not getting it. Oh. Excuse me. Oh man, that's a hard one. What a good question. If somebody's choosing between Protestantism and Catholicism, which would you advise them? If somebody was gonna go to a strip club or decided they're gonna go to a strip club or a cocaine party with Julio's cocaine party, what would you advise them? Answer that, and I'll answer. Actually, I think it would be morally more detrimental to go to a. So let me find a better example. Or is that a good example? I know, I was actually thinking the Coke party would actually be far less morally detrimental than going to a strip club. So that's probably not the best analogy. Both are bad. I'd actually say one's probably a lot. Stay home and do Coke? This is your answer? Okay. Yeah, it's... maybe that's a better one. Should I stay home and watch Prawn or go to the strip club? Your friend's gonna... What do you advise him? It's like... What do you say? That's the same thing. Somebody's gonna be Protestant, or it's like... They're both bad. You can't advise somebody to do something. Suppose they were actually not just moral infractions that I mentioned. Suppose they were crimes. And let's actually suppose maybe one is worse than. And somebody says, to their counselor, I'm gonna commit one of these crimes. I've got to obviously got to commit a crime today, and here's my two options. Which one should I do? There may be one that's not as bad, but do you think your lawyer could ever be like, "Well, I advise you to actually commit this crime"? So even if Now I have another interesting question. I've thought about who would you rather have as a neighbor or a town. This is a good question. Now, Protestants aren't a monolithic group, so we're going to pick on one. Let's pick the non-denom evangelical. Would you rather live in a town with run by non-denoms or a neighbor, or a Roman Catholic neighbor? You choose between Catholic. Yeah, you might actually be better going to a Coke party rather than joining. That's how serious. Isn't that funny? That's how serious of a crime, moral crime that is that when your religions become so bad that actually the better alternative is to go to a Coke party. But I would say the same thing with depends on what kind of RC you are. That's a great. I'd actually probably leave that line, but like as bad as Coke parties are, you'd be better going to. That's gonna be a running joke. That's a good question. See, you're asking the right kinds of questions. What kind of RC? But generally speaking, I probably, at least in person, I get along like online like trad cats. And maybe they only act that way online. I don't know. They're probably worse than evangelicals. However, if I had as a neighbor, I mean, I work at a Roman Catholic college. Like, I enjoy their company and their friendship. Like, they're actually decent people. And I prefer them living in my neighborhood than evangelitards. So maybe that's a better question. But I could never recommend if somebody's considering joining, the option between joining two false religions, which one? I'd be like, well, I advise you. I don't know, maybe just tell them this. You know what you ought to do? Pick the one that's clearly has the most errors. And you should join that one. If you're gonna crash and burn, you better go all the way. Go out with a bang. Pick the one that's the worst. That's what I would say. If you're gonna go to hell and you're gonna crash out, just pick the worst one, okay? Because you know what? Actually, that might be the best way for you to sober up and eventually realize what a crazy cult I'm in, and then come to orthodoxy. So that's what I would say. If you're gonna crash, go all the way. Do it in style and pick just the most retarded, messed up cult of those two options in there, and then just crash and burn, and then we'll be as Orthodox waiting to pick you up. That's my. Yeah, it's kind of like hand him over Satan. Because hit the books harder than non-denoms. I'm just gonna read this. Read all these books here. Yeah, I'm glad you guys appreciate my humor. And it's humor, by the way. Let that be known. I am not advocating you do immoral or illegal things. Don't. But we can joke about it. Jokes are funny. Okay. I don't know if I have time today, but I have an interesting concept. We have a mathematician in the Discord that I have a minor in mathematics, right? I've done a lot. Nothing like this. I don't know what. I know vaguely some stuff that he's talking about. Mathematicians have gotten into this kind of what's intuitionist logic, and there's stuff he wants to know how this relates with it's so detailed. It's gonna take a lot of time. I wish we had. There's a friend of mine who'd be better to answer, and I haven't talked to him for ages. He would be really good because we did apologetics together. I remember him all the way from junior high school. He got his PhD in mathematical logic from UCLA. I wish I could just turn him over to. Again, I know I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good at logic. I'm competent. I'm not an expert, and I mean, if you look at like how difficult some of this logic gets, right? Like I can't do these kind of higher order, and I know I didn't do logical mathematical logic, and I didn't study, so some of these things I just don't know how to answer. But interesting one was asking, because his Orthodox were realists, so he's like, do you believe numbers are real? It's like, yeah, like every single one of them. This is a good question. Like, I don't know. Maybe. Why do I have to answer this? Like, obviously, and I brought this up, you start with the clear cases, as Aristotle says. And he was like, well, if you don't see, this is obsession with these kind of algorithms, right? As being a mathematician, it's like, well, how do you know in the gray areas? I'm like, I don't know. I know, traditionally the traditional numbers and natural numbers and stuff like that, mathematical objects, geometrical objects and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a universal form that they correspond to so that they're real, which God creates and sustains in his divine logos. But why? I don't understand this. Why do I have to answer convoluted cases? For example, where's my... I'm going to do mathematics. We pull out Dedekine. Oh no. Rip my cassock. I'll read through. It's actually difficult. I remember doing this. Let's read this. Properties of rational numbers. We'll just start there. See, even he starts with the most obvious. The development of arithmetic of rational numbers is here proposed, but I still think it worthwhile to call attention to certain important matters without discussion, so as to show the outset the standpoint assumed in what follows. I regard the whole of arithmetic as necessary, at least natural, consequence of the simplest arithmetic act, that of counting. Counting itself is none else than successive creation of the infinite series of positive integers. Oh, now I get it. So his discussion is So I think the intuitionists don't believe there could actually be an infinite set. So it's about this question about realism and stuff about... So if these are defined in terms... Well, I don't know if I agree with that. Why... Why does a number have to be dependent upon an infinite series of positive integers? Now that I remember, this is the Dedekind, what's called the Dedekind cut, that you have to complete this. The simplest act is passing from the already formed individual to consecutive new one to be formed. This chain of numbers forms in itself an exceedingly useful instrument for the human mind. It presents an inexhaustible wealth of remarkable laws by the introduction of 4 fundamental operations of arithmetic, in addition to the combination of any arbitrary repetitions of the above-mentioned simplest act into a single act from in a simple way. Okay, so I'm about to go back into this and think about... But traditionally... this is really complicated. Somehow this gentleman thinks tag is dependent on that I have a completely worked out ontology of mathematics. It's like, maybe you're talking to the wrong person. Like, I know a lot, but like, I'm not the expert on... Now what is interesting, I had a mathematics professor, and she believed numbers are actually lines. And this is really interesting. So that would mean, and she was a Platonist, that would mean that, and you can go back to Euclid to find this stuff. There's a Platonic form, something like a Platonic form out there that's a line. So the first line is the unit. Should I just pull up my Euclid and go through? The unit is not a number because number is an act, an arithmetic act. The unit taken so many times. But there would be a Platonic form or a universal that corresponds to. Now when it comes to the other part of mathematics, it's not arithmetic, geometric. There are geometrical forms. All of this is Orthodox, we'd say, is contained in the mind, the ideas of God, insofar as he creates these universal forms by which, in our mind, and when we talk about numbers, they correspond to. Okay. The universals, these something akin to Platonic universals, are created. They're not identical with God's divine ideas, but they're created out of that kind of archetype. Not archetype, what's the exemplar? But they're more than that. So I don't understand, first of all, why I have to be able to answer, like, do I know that every single number that we can create right, corresponds to some form? It's like, I don't know. What, I don't think I have to answer that. Go talk to somebody that, well, if it doesn't, tag doesn't, where it's like, I'm wondering too if this individual thinks that logic's based on mathematics is reducible to math. Obviously, I hold to classic view of logic, it has to do with, the law of excluding the middle. These people want to know, is there actually a law out there? And so an intuitionistic logic, this kind of paraconsistent logic, they don't deny it. They don't accept it as a law that every proposition has to be bivalent. I think it's silly. I'm like, I just don't. What did I write? Here, I'll read you what I wrote. So this gentleman's question. What justifies internally bivalence is... And if you're in the chat, you can jump it. But, like, this is going to get so down deep. And I mentioned this, too, that... I'm like, I guess I could go there and spend a bunch of time. Like, obviously, you're better at mathematics than that. Like, so... You're going to find that there's stuff that I'm not going to be able to answer. Does that mean tag doesn't work unless I can answer every expert's, like, prove it in this field? It's like, I'm not going to be able to do that. It's an unreasonable demand. I'm about to turn you over to the cops. I mean, somebody like my friend who has a PhD in mathematical logic, I'm not going to, some of these theories I'm kind of like, I could probably read papers on it, but I think you're just asking the wrong person here. I know my area, like my competency, and this is probably beyond it. But I could generally talk about. I would argue that because classical logic, first of all, it's historical, right? But it has a coherent metaphysical account. And it's not only intuitive. What do I mean by that? I mean, think about how silly this is. You're looking at a lady and she's either pregnant or not, and you're saying, well, you can't actually prove she's not pregnant by double negation. Because why? Well, I don't necessarily accept that as a proof. It's like, well, congratulations. It's like one of my professors, he was a Roman Catholic priest in grad school, gives a lecture on the new atheists, right? And critiquing them. And somebody at the end of the Q&A gets up and is like, I don't believe in God. And he was like, congratulations, we're all so proud of you. So it's like, let's give a round of applause. You don't believe in something. Well, who cares? It's the same as like, you don't believe it? I don't understand why somebody creates a made-up axiomatic, a priori system in their head, and it's like, you have to prove it by it's like, I don't have to do a dang thing. I mean, how many people even understand this? Like, why is it my burden of proof to go and find some, like, obscure math and be like, man, I've got to learn all of intuitionist logic and all these people so I can prove it given their arbitrary system. Now, I do think in terms of formal mathematics, it does certain stuff and that's cool, but like, I think it's just so far removed from reality. All right, moving on. Do you get what I'm saying, though? And I'm going to go... How was Hades made, and how did Satan have dominion? Well, you're going to have to basically create a formal system. How do I put this? You're going to basically have to study Cantor and then Brouwer and Hilbert and these mathematicians. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to deny you're not going to accept the law of exclude the middle. And then if you can do a constructive proof on that, that doesn't accept the double negation, then you'll actually pleasantly be surprised that you will actually find out how Hades was made. So that's my recommendation. To do that, study, get a PhD in formal logic or mathematical logic, and then you can do your own proofs and figure out exactly how Hades was made. You know what? I'm going to start selling this. I'll have an app with these, like, that you can purchase on Patristic Faith, that you can download and put these, like, it will actually go through the mathematical logic, and then it'll give a breakdown of all the constituent parts, including modal parts, every possible Hades and every possible logical world, and how it was actually made. I think that's a pretty good investment. I think it's something that might actually sell. So go ahead and thank you for your super chat. Math. So he's asking, what's the justification, right, for internally bivalence of the law of exclude the middle? That'll be my justification for classical logic. And I don't see any justification that isn't arbitrary, just going to fall victim to the problems of analyticity for the intuitionistic logic. So, but let me go through. Why is it intuitive? Because the world is bivalent. Either she's pregnant or she's not. How about that? And therefore, classical logic is epistemically grounded in reality. Now, he wants to get into the question about mathematical entities. But again, yes, I do believe there's mathematical entities. I'm a mathematical realist. Okay? Does that mean everything you can create will correspond to something real? I don't know. You might get me on something. I'm afraid to say it, right? That's kind of what I'm like. Maybe, I don't know. I do know that there's, classical rational numbers. I'll have to think about irrational numbers and non-whole numbers and stuff like that. But typically, yeah, I kind of like my professor's idea. If it corresponds to a line, then there's something like a Platonic line out there that if it's just some total kind of, there's no way that I could kind of represent that on, I don't know. But that's how I would determine. Anyways, the world is bivalent. Facts obtain or they don't. And so what's my justification? Well, the history of and the kind of metaphysics that Orthodoxy would roughly agree with of the ancients, kind of somewhere between Platonic realism and Aristotelian hylomorphism, something not identical, but something like that, such that the law of exclude the middle mirrors that metaphysically. So my Orthodoxy's metaphysics is what grounds that. This is the realism. And that's just been the traditional view and justification for classical logic. When do the other forms of logic come about? when there is a rejection of real essentialism, that there's real essences or forms or universals, and then this kind of materialistic picture and nominalism, and these further moves to be unable to resolve and answer the skeptical philosophical questions about an external world. And this goes into two ways in philosophy: continental and then analytic. So in analytic philosophy, they basically you can't ever get to, and we could do a course, a lecture on this. It's really good, especially in the Bonjour book, the critiques of analyticity, that there's nothing substantial, and then, and in fact, what's really interesting too is the bizarro theory that occurs, but because it's logically consistent from previous eras of the sense datum theorists, and this concept of immediacy, all of which is to say, moderns find themselves locked inside their head. Unable, in other words, either metaphysical anti-realists or metaphysical quietists. Nothing can be said, or there's just nothing out there. Okay, so then what do? They're like, well, gosh dang, we're going to be out of jobs. If the world ever finds out about this, we're going to be out of a job. Well, you know what we should do? Just ignore, can't solve it, can't get outside of our head. So let's just focus on formal systems, linguistically, mathematically, and stuff like that. That's how all these things came about. Most of them are nominalists, because that fits within. Because why? It's what if you're not a realist, you have to take the position of a nominalist. The other way is continental. All of this is the death of metaphysics, is what I'm trying to explain. Phenomenology comes about. But we can't actually get into the kind of noumenal world, this kind of realism, this kind of death of metaphysics. So we can reconstruct a philosophical project in terms of the phenomena, the appearances. And that should be kind of a starting point. Okay, so those are two. And there might actually, I think there are some mathematicians that are kind of working this out in phenomena. Now, there's certain things I do appreciate about phenomenology, and the kind of language breaks open kind of ways of inquiring into the world with sort of kind of freedom and stuff like that I do appreciate. But you can see it is a departure from the kind of classical metaphysics. Okay, any questions on that so far? Itchy eye today. Ugh, you ever get that? No. They do not mean A can be A, and they don't deny the law of non-contradiction. That's another group. They deny the law of exclude the middle. They don't deny it. They don't... How do I put this? They don't deny it. They don't accept that, let's say, for example, in a disjunct, they don't think you could actually, how do I put this, prove anything from a disjunctive and, let's say, double negation, so you have to construct a positive proof. There might be times they do accept it. And then Alethean, it would be denying or not accepting in certain circumstances the law of non-contradiction. It's complicated. It's really complicated. Do we have any super chats? I feel like I'm just going on a wonderful lecture with not getting paid. Man, what a low. We need to do like one of those challenges. We only have 5, 6, 7, we have 12. Only $14 of tips today. Are you not entertained? Don't you? Aren't you guys nerds and love this stuff? Yeah, there's different groups of people. Shocker. Ortland? Or Gavin McGinnis? Or Gavin Newsom? We got 3 Gavins. So we got a problem of reference here. We got 3 Gavins. How do we determine from Snakefoot's comment that establishes a reference? Is it Gavin Ortland, Gavin Newsom, or Gavin McGinnis? Or Gavin... Is there another Gavin? Or is it Gavinization? Incoming tip? I don't know. I'm the, where they have like the thing where you have to put money in and it's like, zzz. I don't speak or move until I get a tip in the tip jar. Yes, Kristen, $20 lecture service fee. Thank you so much. Now, $20 will keep me going. $25 will keep me going even more. To thee we sing. $25. Thank you so much. Okay. Back to macaroni mathematics. Metabivalence is internalized because denying it leads to counterintuitive result. How about that? I do believe, maybe you can get out of this. I believe it ultimately is both historically premised on anti-realism and nominalism. Will certainly lead to, you're going to have a real rough time getting to realism from, not to mention unjustifiable, arbitrary, axiomatic, abstract systems. So, yesterday in logic class, we were doing the Bonson-Stein debate. So Stein believes that, he doesn't believe that, what did he say, that logic's material. He's like, how could it be? And then Bonson's like, well, that's the question I'm going to ask you. But he thinks it's conventional. Now he's got him in kind of a pickle here, speaking of pickle, because where does it exist? If it's not material, then where does it exist? Now, somebody that believes in immaterial domain or entities or objects, like a Platonist or a Christian or a Aristotelian, would be like, well, they're existed as forms or grounded in forms or something like that. But I mean, how is Stein going to answer that? So what he says is, he just pushes it back. Well, they're in the mind. Okay, so this is this formalism. And they're conventional. This is an argument I bring up too. You know, when you get to Wilfred Van Orman Quine, you know, who's a mathematician, logician, philosopher, he says there's no system that's not capable of being revised, immune from revision. That means our logical systems too. Now, I don't agree with that, but this is his position, right? When you kind of get to this, and I'm trying to remember what Quine. I don't know if I would. He's not an anti-realist. He is. If I pop this up, philosophy of science chart. On the realism spectrum, are you on the spectrum, guys? Actually, my cable company's called Spectrum, so actually, ironically enough, aren't on the spectrum, even though I'm not on the... Okay, Pythagoras. Which means Plato, because Plato studied under Pythagoras. It's kind of correspondence, naive realism. The world I see is real. What are you all arguing about? Scientific realism. Science makes real progress in describing real features in the world. And that would probably be, is going to be grounded in forms as well. Structural science has identified real patterns. This is still, pattern is, Aristotle calls a form a pattern. But notice it's not correspondence. So you have Quine being put in on the farthest reach, moving away from realism while still in it, while still 1 foot in anti-realism, because of probably his coherentism and denial of correspondence theory. That propositions do not have a one-to-one correspondence with reality, but have their meaning, justification, and truth value in virtue of the whole kind of interrelated web of beliefs. So that's, and he says, and then that web of belief impinges upon reality at the edges. So it has a context. That's why they have him. He's not an anti-realist. Totally, because he's got 1 foot in. It's like it's impinging on reality. But when I talk about an atom and say hydrogen has 1 electron, that proposition has no correspondence with anything in reality. But hydrogen and atom, like all these things, imply other kind of statements and beliefs. That's a whole kind of fabric. And that fabric touches on reality. But none of the propositions or entities, which I call atoms, there's an actual atom out there. There's a one-to-one kind of isomorphic correspondence. Okay. So, well, if that's the case, then yeah. You could, whether it's a scientific paradigm or logic itself, reconstruct. Nothing is immune from revision and reconstruction. Does that make sense? On Quine's position. I'm going to ask you, does it make actual sense? So, excuse me. In some sense, and on that spectrum, if I put up it again and again, you get to the all the way on to the anti-realist Fairband. I almost want to say Fairband. Which has hilarious arguments. Like, he's actually a good, like, none of us are going to believe in him, but it's like when you use the skeptics and like Hume and stuff to beat up on atheists. He's hilarious and great for beating up on Sointus, right? Who of a kind of Scientology and stuff like that, because he's just like, none of it's real. It's all just subjective, totally conventional, and his arguments are really actually kind of funny. And you bring it up because as a challenge to a scientist, because they're so dogmatic about their beliefs in an unjustified way that they wouldn't actually be able to answer any of these things. So he's kind of funny. But anyways, if with Stein, for example, as Bonson, well, then I could just create up my own system of logic, which he brings up in the debate. Maybe there's if it's just conventional, then we can just formalize this stuff. Make it completely, well, in my system, and I don't even know if Bonson knew about this at the time. I don't remember when that debate was. But he's like, there might be a group that denies the law of contradiction and believes that their car is both in the driveway and not in the driveway. And it's like, actually, according to pure consistent logic, you can have. So later on in the debate becomes the question, why should I believe your system? And this is what I'm presenting to the gentleman. Why ought I to adopt a different logical system than the classic? Like, I have plenty of reasons, and both historically too, but metaphysically, to talk about why I might adopt a classical view of logic. But what's the reason I should adopt intuitionist logic or Althaean logic or some paraconsistent logic? What is the response going to be? Have you ever thought about that? I'm going to ask, is it true? Watch them say, well, it depends on what you mean, what truth is. See? Truth is defined according to the system. They could say it works. Works for what? The arbitrary rules of doing stuff that in my game I decided we're going to do. It's logically consistent. Why is logical consistency good? Because my game, that's the rules of my axioms in my game that I created. And does it correspond to reality in any way? And how would you establish that? How would you find justification for that without assuming what you want to prove? That's why I think all of this is kind of a red herring, and it's missing the epistemic forest for the epistemic trees. What comes first, the formal systems or reality, first of all? And number two, there's a bigger question than answering all of these things, kind of what I was asking. Why ought I to, what objective, apart from what the system it says and the axiomatic rules and different things within the system does, which is just a description, right? There's no ought in the system. The system, a formal system, will never be able to tell you why you, in a normative category, why you ought. It's just internally it describes things. This is the rule, and this follows. The system, a mathematical system, is not an epistemology either. Neither is a logical system. Might be necessary for it, but it doesn't tell you itself how and why something is a justification and whether you ought to believe. It's descriptive. So, going back, it's not an objection, like, and why do I have to explain it? That's like somebody saying, I created this sports ball game. And these are all the rules. And this is how, see how they all work together. And if you do this, then the sports ball goes into the hole and you get sport ball hole points. And, but you can't cross this sports ball line here, and you can't, because then that means it's offsides, and like you do all these different things, and it's like, do you want to play the game? No, you've got now you've got to prove to me in my game. It's like, or you have to play why ought I to play the game? Because that's what the game is. It's like, yeah, but the game doesn't answer why I should play the game. It just says, if you do, then these are the rules. Who decided it? Reality? No, we just created it. So we could revise it, right? Well, no, because there's a rule that would cause a problem. Like, well, let's just change the rule in the game, right? Well, it's more rigorous. That's what they said. It's more rigorous in terms of proofs than what a classical... Like, who cares? Like, why do I want that in a game? It was just a formal, abstract system, right? And prove what? It just proves something internally? Well, then we just got, again, I'm going to show, we've got the problems of analyticity. And it's just so far removed from... I'm like, if you get so far deep into this stuff that you can't actually tell the bivalent situation that she's either pregnant or not, like, don't you kind of think that that's a problem? You're so locked into your head that, like, yeah, try. Here's my test. Why shouldn't we? What justifies classical logic? Because try pulling it off practically in a courtroom. Well, Your Honor, I don't necessarily accept. I know you're saying that I either committed the crime or not, and from that disjunct, and the evidence in that disjunctive, obviously saying I am the criminal committed, but I don't accept the law, necessarily accept deductions or proofs from the law of exclude the middle, because I don't necessarily accept that within my intuition and logic. Try it. I try to use it in a court of law and see what happens. Totally detached from reality. And then I have the person who's like, well, not all people are. So it's like, so you're going to give me another story about all of this should show you why is it missing the mark? Why is it missing the epistemic force for the epistemic trees? Because it really is either autonomous epistemology or theonomous. Well, I don't accept that disjunct. Right? So they're leading with a formalism. Okay, it's not... the world's not true because they're like... There's some formal system, right, of logic. So I think if they got it reversed, the world is actually that way. She's either pregnant or she's not. Either it's theonomous epistemology or autonomous. So anything that I say in terms of trying to formalize this or putting in a predication is because there's a real world that's actually that way. Does that make sense? So it's the impossibility of the contrary, not because of the logic. The logic's true only insofar as that's the way the world really is. So also I'd say the justification is the pragmatic success. Again, intuitive classical logic with the law of exclude the middle underpins all standard math, science, argumentation, law, right? All these alternatives require restricting inference rules in ways that complicate practice without a clear game. What's the game? Well, because in my system, it's a harder, more rigorous way of, it's like, it doesn't tell me why I should adopt it. In other words, there's plenty of justification for classical logic. I see no justification for intuitionist logic that isn't either arbitrary. Again, according to Quine, we could revise a different system. Like, why should I? Well, because it's preference, right? Well, because I like this. Now, I mean, we have this in science, too. Part of the rule of parsimony. And in mathematics, right? If you could prove something with less lines, you're to prefer that in mathematics. It's more beautiful. It's more simplistic. If I can explain with only one cause for some natural phenomenon in the world, rather than two, I prefer that. But why? Because that's what I prefer. I just prefer simple. But why? Well, because that's what I prefer. Do you see where the problem is? Or it's viciously circular. Because I assume my system is the system, and if it's the system that I prefer, then that's why. Which is kind of gets into Gödel's incompleteness theorem. You will never find, you cannot present any justification for the intuitionist system or any paraconsistent logic system from the system itself. It would have to be something outside of there. So it ends up being viciously circular. If you do try to provide why ought I to hold to that and not accept the law of exclude the middle? If we ask, is the logic true? Does it, they're going to redefine it. Does it correspond to the world? Is it epistemically normatively binding? I ought to hold to it, etc. All these answers simply result in saying, because it's formally true, it can do stuff internally that others can't. Like, that's the best. Okay, you've got another description. It does stuff. However, as I mentioned, that's akin to saying I've created an abstract axiomatic game in my head that can do stuff, guys, in a consistent manner. Oh, it's more rigorous. Fine. You create an abstract axiomatic. That doesn't tell me anything about the world. I mean, don't we want to actually know, do these things exist? Is this actually, or you just want to stay in your head? I don't get it. Nathaniel, $5. Thank you. Your morning streams helped me a lot during my inquiry catechumen process and continue to be, well, God bless you. Thank you. Make sure I didn't miss anybody else. Yes, I did. Savar, $5. Is Ignatian answer good for a new catechumen? If so, where do I get a good collection of his letters cheap? You can find on, I know it's a Roman Catholic site, but newadvent.org, I think, if you want online. Otherwise, you're going to have to buy one of the, I guess, one of the books out of the Shaft set. But thank you. So, what tells me I should play the game? Why? Beyond saying, if you do, then these are the rules. So again, it's descriptive and not prescriptive. Doesn't answer the question of arbitrariness of axiomatic starting points. I could pick different starting points and create a new type of system, just like Quine said. Neither does it get around the challenge that's something similar to the Quine-Duhem underdetermination of data, which shows that you can have numerous systems or theories that are incommensurate or even contradictory with each other that are all logically consistent. They all work. Mathematics checks it. They count for the data. whether internally or externally. What's the problem with that? That leads kind of to an arbitrariness. There's nothing that's going to determine that the theory is true. If it meets all those criteria, and you can create, there's nothing that's going to tell me why I should accept system A over B or C. Moreover, intuitionistic logic gets things backwards, as I had mentioned. It puts formal abstract systems first and not the world. Logic and logical systems, as I said, are only true insofar as they're grounded in an experimental reality in some way. Otherwise, this leads to the failures that I can talk about in another stream or lecture on analyticity and non-substantiveness, right? Reduces to, well, we could go over that later. But there's plenty of philosophical literature on the problems of analyticity in the external world. So you're not saying anything substantive whatsoever. Well, but I made a proof, so who cares? We want to know, what are constructive mathematicians doing exactly if constructive reason is parasitic on some kind of non-constructive logic like classical logic? I answered, I'd probably say that something like with tag in the arguments I provided in my meta-theoretical validation paper, constructive reasoning is restricted subsystem. So if I allow it, that may or may not be valuable. Maybe, yeah, you might want these things for dealing with certain issues internally or for computation. Perhaps they're useful in the anti-realist scruples of them arguing back and forth in these formal systems. I don't know. Maybe. But it would be a subset of. It cannot stand alone as the full ground of intelligibility. So suppose I accept paraconsistent logics. There's these different there's still got to, if we're talking about intelligibility, because we're using intelligibility in these systems, that would mean, in some sense, there is an overarching logic. This kind of reminds me of, and that's really what I'm talking about. Then I'm actually talking about what's behind that. What makes that necessary? Okay, this is what Bonson's argument. Stein says everything's proven in the same way. And he says through reason and logic. And so God needs to be proven in the same way. God can't be proven through reason and logic, therefore he's not proven. That would basically be the syllogism of Stein. So then Bonson brings up, we've got a dilemma, a problem here. How is the statement, everything is proven by reason and logic, proven? If you say, and consistently, well, by logic and reason, then it's circular. You beg the question, like, you're using it, like, how do we know that logic and reason? Well, because logic and reason, you see. That's one side of the horns of the dilemma. And the other horn of the dilemma is if you say, not everything, for example, this statement is proven by logic and reason, then your statement is a contradiction. Everything's proven in the same way by logic and reason, but not this statement. So everything is and is not. So you got a dilemma. So, well, how do you get out of this? You have to get out of this transcendentally. Okay. We have three problems. Either logic and reason justifies logic and reason, and it's circular, or this is kind of the trilemma, right? Or it's not justified, or it's an infinite regress. Well, because there's another logical. So all of this to show that we're not in a position to be behind the logic. You're always in the logic box. But that's exactly what would have to be the necessary conditions of justification for it. So there's only one person in a position to actually know that and reveal that and not be restricted by logic, because he created logic. We're not. We can't. So it always takes this form of kind of recursion and reflexivity, that I'm speaking in language in the logic box about something that's beyond actually logic. Now, if I'm stuck and locked in my head in formal systems, then I've got the problem of it's just viciously circular. How do I know that? Well, I appeal to the one thing that's in question to bootstrap myself up into this, or it's just an infinite regress, or there is no justification. Like, that's just because it is. Which is funny, because Stein tries to get out of the... But I didn't know this was all the way back, that the Matt Dillahunty line that logic just is actually goes all the way back to Stein. Logic just is. And Bonson was correct to point out, well, you can just say that, and I can just say it with I mean, God just is. I don't have to give a justification. It's just, what do I call this? I've identified this, the all for thee, none for me criteria fallacy. Well, the fallacy that I'm uniquely, the critique that I'm applying to you that I'm uniquely immune from. You can't. Muslims do this, right? They love to come up with higher textual criticism to debunk Christianity and be like, okay, well then we get to use that on the Quran. No, it's haram, brother. No. You cannot. Oh, because you're somehow magically immune from that. It's a hypocriticalness, right? But as the argument the response back to Matt Dillahunty that I made, are you retarded? You didn't even complete your sentence in terms of subject, verb, and predicate, like a basic grammatic sentence. Logic is what? Finish your sentence. Like, just it. You can't say that. Which gets back to exactly Bonson's point. Is it immaterial, invariant, abstract, universal? Where does it exist? Is it juxtapository? Is it right, true? That's what all these kind of questions are talking about. So you're missing, again, the larger kind of question that I'm talking about, because you're stuck down in the autistic details of these formal systems. And so hold on a second. Let me see if you guys have questions before I go into the next. Patrick's question. I missed a question. Let me look at my super chats. I'm not seeing what you're talking about. Maybe I'm the retarded one. Or I'm just blind. What did Christ say in the gospel? Blessed are those who believe and can't see. I'm like, oh, that's me. I've lost my vision. Holy smokes, sir. Is it ever shut me own heart? I don't see what you're talking about. Who's Patrick? Where am I? Oh, no, I don't know. Yeah, shocker. There's things that I know. I actually don't know that answer. And fine admitting stuff that I don't know. Like how to answer. Does every single number correspond to something real? I don't know. Maybe you should just tell people what I'm like, what do you want me to say? Yes? You want me to say? Okay, then yeah. No? No. What? Just start telling people. Obviously, I already know. what they want me to say. What do you want me to say? Then that's the right answer, okay? So let's say I give my opponent the intuition as the benefit of the doubt. Let's suppose it could, and I'm not really believing this, but it could provide some level of justification beyond itself. Without just vicious circularity. I said it's missing you're missing the bigger question. I would argue that it presupposes, and like I said, is there not some universal logic behind that? Like a logic of intelligibility. And maybe there are failures and inadequacies with classical logic. The point of the whole conversation is, if you have multiple competing paraconsistent logics and stuff like that, and they're intelligible, then there's a logic that stands behind the logics. And then there's something that stands behind that. That's not a formal system, a logical system. Okay? It reminds me of the people, the science tards that's like multiverse. Well, there could be another, universe. Okay, but then there's a universe in which all these multiple universes exist. Why? Because that's what universe means. Everything that exists. I mean, so you're not getting out of the problem that there's not something that stands behind this. The same way with this. Even if this, I grant you this, and there's some justification on these things, you're missing the point. There's some sort of even created system or formal logic that stands behind all of these systems, that provides for intelligibility, and then something that isn't a system that stands behind that. A meta level. The richer classical resources that tag grounds theonomously. So I'm like, you're not going to be able to pull it off autonomously. That's all I'm trying to get you to understand. And then you're like, yeah, but did that actually presuppose an Althean logic or intuition? It's like, no. Talk normal. So although constructors are doing, I would say, genuine mathematics, it's not capable in of itself of providing the transcendental preconditions of all reasoning. That's what I'm trying to say. Hence, it's a parasitic at best. But it shows just why autonomous attempts to do without classical logic fail to escape the regressor circuit or the bigger problem. There's a logic behind that. He asks, can formalization ever correct a pre-formal concept, or is it always downstream? These are really technical questions. I would say the tag leans toward a pre-formal, for the reasons I said. There's something behind any of these systems, being primary but grounded transcendentally. Formalization is illustrative and pedagogical because the ultimate precondition, the divine intellect, is not itself a formal system. That's what I said. Therefore, formalization cannot correct the ground. It illustrates or approximates, although it may refine our finite grasp, right? So when we're systematizing stuff, sure, maybe, which avoid the illusion or error of formalism, is self-grounding. That's what I'm trying to say. Something that I've shown is impossible. Last question. He asks, what is the nature of preconditional relation? Counterfactual dependence, causal dependence, conceptual dependence, logical, metaphysical, etc. Are there other examples? And tag, the relation's transcendental. Okay? That is to say, y is a necessary precondition for x if x possibility or intelligibility requires y. So that's not merely, so notice it's a different category. So he's trying to push me into, is it modal, is it logical category, is it causal? It's not. It's its own category. It's transcendental. It's not merely causal or logical, but it's a condition that makes X coherent at all, right? This is the possibility of intelligibility. This is stronger than logical consequence, that Y implies X in all possible worlds or something like that. Why? Because that'd be too weak. It's about enabling the entire framework of intelligibility. But it's not reducible to counterfactuals alone. In other words, example, if not y, then not x. Captures dependence, but not the why. So it doesn't explain the why. I would say it's closest to something like a metaphysical grounding. If we put it into a category, y grounds x in a fundamental structure of reality as it pertains to intelligibility. But however, I would say categorically this relation is what we... the category is theonomous, which is why I use that term. It's a transcendental in the theonomous category. How about that? That is to say, the relation is the Orthodox Christian God that grounds logic and reason. It's its own category. You keep trying to push me into the stuff that it's like, it's not in there. It stands behind all of that. Why? Which is ultimately to say why I call it the AA arguments apophatic. There is no speech or categories or logical that stand behind God by which you understand and prove God by, which is exactly what Russ Mannion says. There is no purely rationalistic proof for theism. There's only a theistic account for rationality, where they say, well, that's a law of excludability either. It's like, you're missing it. I can't help but speak in that way, but that's the reality. You see what I'm saying, right? And so to get in this kind of formalism really is just kind of red herring. Yeah, Patrick, you didn't hear when I answered the super chat earlier? I did mention that. I just said, I don't know. But thank you for your super chat. All right. He responds, I'm going to have to take it like, it's just really detailed to... But I'm curious, why do I have to answer somebody according to their system? Like, you have to prove it in my own system that... I mean, how many percentage of society actually understands, like, formal abstract mathematical systems at this level? Second order logic, higher logics, 1%? I mean... Like, well, you actually have to answer according to their system now and prove it. It's like, I have a friend who has Franzia logic. Have you ever heard from the mathematicians Franzia? Oh yeah, Father Stephen DeYoung. Go check out Father Stephen DeYoung. He probably knows. Again, I could defer to people who are much better and experts in particular areas, and I'm fine admitting stuff that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer certain stuff. No, good question, Anthony. If you have a priest that has heretical beliefs with the liturgy, it'd be just as effective. That's what the Donatists, until they're excommunicated. So there's a grace in the office. And notice the priests in the liturgy of St. Basil do not withhold the grace due to my sins, whether personal or into like theological or something like that. It's not dependent on the priest, the individual priest as a person, but the office. That's why there's a grace in the ordination that protects the sin, right? So that the sins don't cancel out. Once they're excommunicated for something, for being unrepentant of a moral sin or a theological sin, then they can't, then, yeah, it doesn't do anything. But because, you know why? You'd never know when somebody's personally holding and this is the problem with the TOs, they think even looking at somebody who holds a heretical belief invalidates you. Don't touch it. And if you do, first of all, there was always a point in time in the church in which there was some contact and communion with somebody holding a heresy. So it undercuts your argument as a schismatic, right? The old calendar schematic, that being in communion with a heretic invalid. Well, then you don't have apostolics, none of your ordinations, right? So even if you came from like Rokor that had a legitimate or Moscow or some, oh, we'll see, our bishop was, well, you just undercut your argument because there can be a valid ordination because apostolic succession was abolished if you become a heretic. I mean, if you touch a heretic or in communion with, which has always been in the history of church, at some point in time, the church was in communion with somebody that held a heretical view before they excommunicated them. So here's the other thing. If heresy prior to your day in court is what excommunicates you and you have no validity or powers, you don't know at any one point in time if a priest or a bishop is holding that privately. So congratulations. Your spurginess for hyper-scrupulosity just undercut your whole argument. Like, you have no idea if you're actually in the church or not, or the sacraments are efficacious, or they're actual sacraments. It's such a stupid... So, they're in the church even holding heretical views until they get their day in court and are sentenced and excommunicated. Then they're not. Why? Because a God is not a God of confusion. He doesn't blur boundaries. He gives us a way of objectively and not subjectively knowing who's in and who's out of the church, where the boundaries of the church are. Good question. Next. All right, I gotta write emails to my students. Then I have a really cool. There's a guy coming down that I'm gonna meet, potential student at Carroll College. Must be Orthodox. Administration called me last week. It was like, hey, there's a person coming that wants to go to school here because they want to study under me. So I'm going to meet this potential student. And then I have a stream. I don't think it's going to be live. I think it's pre-recorded and then uploaded on Mano's Study of Things. So looking forward to that. Mano's going to be with us in MontaNeica as well as a bunch of people from Jay's Parish, Neil DeGrade, Michael Thompson, a bunch. So I'm really excited about that. Excited to see all of you guys. It's going to be the best one ever. What did I say? Last MontaNika. Like your last chance. We are not doing any more. And if we do, next year's, then pleasant surprise. How about that? Let's see if you have any questions. All right, anything else? gotta work on my paper for the conference. 6 weeks. What do we have? Can we raid? Yeah. You're free to do whatever you want. You can put the link. How do we figure out how to do the raid again? Is there something I can do from my end? Can somebody help me? I totally forgot about that. Rather than just telling people. Can I dump all of you into the... Oh, tired. Does somebody know how to do that? I thought I set it up where you can do that. There should be an option, but I'm not seeing it. So yeah, where's the raid button? Raid! Delay ads, create highlight video, ad stream, marker, down at the bottom, add emojis. Show your support for... Oh, that's what you guys are saying. Engage with your audience. Yeah, but where's the button? If I used to do it, there should be a button, right? Is there a place I should be looking for on this? By the way, guess what? No audio problems. I must have, knock on wood and pray to God that... Click delay ads. I set ads to the lowest frequency, so I don't know what to do beyond that. What was peak concurrent? We're 25 right now. All right, God bless you guys. May you have a good week, and until next time, God bless you, keep you, let his grace shine upon you, and one more thing. Christ has risen. Amen.